I've made several different statements. I've received many, many messages. I've tried to show people what I'm dealing with in my life daily and how I have done things to the best of my ability along those lines. For someone who is shrewd, they'll start to recognize the mood, attitude, and meaning of some of the things that I've said in text only, essentially. It's very difficult for me to put thoughts together to string things along because my mind doesn't work in a linear fashion. Never has. I know the shape of time is not linear. I know that our experience is linear, which means it is a illusion, delusion, or simulation. You could classify it as any of those three. There are extremely accurate comparisons that can be made when you start looking at all the things that society regularly ignores. Aliens. Oh, absolutely not. Well, have you even thought of it? I mean, even scientifically speaking, it is an inevitability, not a possibility. Every time we start looking at statistics, we start getting confused. And that's because we aren't actually looking at the whole statistic. We look at one number. In truth, there's a spectrum of numbers. And they're all accurate. They all apply. We don't experience all of them at the same time. Think of it like this. I mean, I keep saying that we live in a fractal universe. Our brain only functions one portion at a time. All of it has function at some time or other. We are aware of a portion of anything that we experience at any given time. The fascinating thing is we've been able to prove scientifically that our brains, our beings, our mind, our consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is aware of far more than we're consciously aware of. And we still ignore all of this. Everything in nature and science tells us that we know a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of everything that there is. And yet, all the avenues that are there to help us explore the things that we don't know, we ignore. Oh, we just don't know it, so let's not go there. It's scary. We don't know. So, we have decided to cut ourselves off, essentially. Whether we realized it or not, this is what we as a human race have done. We have forgotten. We've forgotten our true history. So, because we've hidden our own true history from ourselves, we can't learn the proper lessons. The history that we do have, we just kind of shrug off and go, oh, well, that was history. Why does that make any difference now? Well, if you're paying attention to the history that you've been taught, and I don't mean taught just from schools, I mean taught from anyone, history changes, just like the future. How does that work? Mandala effect. I mean, we see it in scientific principle all the time. Things wind up changing, and it's like, okay, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because we're not taking it all into account. It's not that the universe is chaotic, it's that we're looking at too many processes all at the same time. So think of it this way. If somebody was to hear a constant high C in their ears their entire life, would they ever actually hear it? No, they'd be tone deaf to that tone. I'm actually reviewing quite a few little tidbits there if anybody's really paying attention. All the different videos that I do, they all start off from different areas. They go different routes. They are talking about more or less different things, and they all come together as part of the same thing. This is why people don't get it when I say grow a home for world peace. How the hell does growing a home make world peace? It does. Take my word for it or not, it doesn't really matter. I prefer you actually ask questions because that means you're going to look into it and try to do something. You're going to experiment. You're going to get curious. That's what I want you to do. I don't want you to take my word for it, really. I don't want you to just go, oh, well, sounds nice. What's on the TV today? What's my next job? What's the next thing to do? Oh, I forgot all about that. We all do it. Even I do it. I have a terrible memory, and well, part of that is because of everything I have chosen to be aware of in this life. Because, quite frankly, I am less aware of the life that I'm living than I am of all the associated lives of this life. I don't know how to describe it. This life is important, but it's not important as its own life. It's really hard to describe. It makes it sound like I'm discounting or degrading it in my life. I'm really not. The words make it very difficult to explain and describe, though. If I could somehow describe the whole vision of everything that I am aware of, that I can currently see, which is a constantly shifting, evolving, ever-changing viewpoint, really. If I could somehow pass that on, which is exactly what I've attempted to do in so many ways, it's ridiculous. It's still there for anybody who really wants to delve into and look into. Unfortunately, because of how my scattered mind works, you have to dig through what appears to be a hell of a lot of shit to find the gold. When you connect it all together, you're going to figure out that that shit is a different form of gold. That's the best way I can put it. So when I say that this life that I'm currently living is really, for all intents and purposes, pointless all in and of itself, what I'm really saying is it's the root and base for all the great, powerful things that are associated to this life. I'm not the big scene. I am the cultivator of the scene, or helper of cultivating the scene, because I'm not the only one. My words tend to sound extraordinarily discounting. cynical even. And if I could actually give you a mental image of everything I'm seeing when I put words down, you would see that even though your view of what I'm saying is relatively accurate and it is sort of what I'm saying, the meaning behind it is exactly opposite somehow. The world itself is upside down to what I'm used to. I honestly don't belong here. I was asked here. I was called here. I was asked to attempt to help in any and every way that I possibly can. I've almost done the reverse a couple of times because people are idiots. And that includes me, but but I mean, it gets so frustrating. When you do have moments of clarity and you can see a thing for what it actually is at the time that you're seeing it instead of what you define it to be. When you can get to that point, you can actually see it for what it is. It becomes impossible to put into words. You can guide somebody to the experience, but I mean, the only way to actually prove it is if you do it. You can theorize, you can guess, you can assume all you want, but until you do, you're not going to be able to prove it. I'm not going to prove it to you. You have to experience it. That's just how it goes. That's actually the way faith is supposed to work. It's a compass. You're supposed to question faith. And then when you find out the truth of that faith, you take the next step. There are times when you will be strongly motivated to do things a specific way. This is not necessarily a bad thing. As long as you recognize how to recognize the voices for what they are. When you start to tap into the world and you actually hear everything around you, you start hearing the things that nobody else hears. They don't translate into words. You can't really put them into words. The best you can do is give a translation of what it actually is. It's a description at best. There's no other way around it. Then somebody figures out exactly how to take the proper step. And see, this is your responsibility. You have to look into the description. This description isn't going to fit in your view of the world. But if you take that description and look at how it fits, you'll find something in your world that will work better for you somehow. How do I know this works? Because I've done this my whole life. This is how I learn. I never learned a damn thing from school except that you can't learn anything in school. It's too violent. It's too strict. It's too rigid. There's nothing to be learned in things you already know. You know, the only way you can learn something is by going into the crazy realm, because let me tell you, truth, fact is stranger than fiction. The things that you see around you that are so mundane, that are taken for granted, if you look at how they operate on their own, what functions they serve on their own. What is it that they need? What is it that they produce? What is it that their sheer existence does to the environment around it? You can apply that to animals, plants, mineral. It doesn't matter. You put metal in the middle of the desert and eventually it's actually going to become magnetic. Why? I know the scientific facts behind it, but there's also some principles that the scientific facts miss. This is the principle of mysticism. Science and magic go hand in hand. You will hear me say that more times than you will care to hear. It's a fact. It's something that people have been ignoring, hiding, scoffing, beating around the bush with. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. It's there. It's fact. It's real. And it's not going away. You can ignore it, and you might get lucky enough that whatever you're ignoring won't bite you in the butt this life. But eventually you're going to need to learn about it. Why are there many lives? Why is it that we tend to only remember this one life? I think I can actually kind of answer that now. Because I've already experienced what it's like to live many lives at one time. First off, nobody believes you when you tell them, hey, I know a you that did the other thing that you were thinking of doing. What are you talking about? I never even told you about that. I know about it. How do you explain that? Mysticism. Forgotten science? We've definitely forgotten a lot more science than we've learned. You have no idea unless you start thinking closer to the lines of Star Trek, because that technology already exists, has already existed by human hands, just not on this planet. We're the intruders. Another thing you will hear me say more times than you'll think is sane, and also unfortunately true. We're the demons. We're the evil. The reason why we're the evil is because we're ignoring what we're leaving behind. You can change the future, and the future changes the past. If you put it all together, you start to figure it out. This video fits beautifully in with all the other videos. It is part of that whole structure. I can never describe in words well enough for people to recognize that when I'm speaking about something, I'm speaking on multiple levels, in multiple ways. I mean, branches upon branches upon branches upon branches upon branches upon branches. Start thinking Doctor Strange, and I guarantee you will have a better grasp on reality. I guarantee you. Doctor Strange, Tesla, frequency, vibration, fractal. How is everything a fractal? How are you a part of all the fractals around you? This is key. It's right in front of your nose. It's not actually secret. You've just been taught to ignore it, which keeps it secret. A apocalypse. The end of the world as we know it. This is the key right there. It's people have already gone through this apocalypse, but this will be the first time in this history that this world will see a mass apocalypse. What does apocalypse mean? Enlightening. It's not something to be afraid of, you dumbasses. You've been taught to fear it. You've been taught to fear your own empowerment. When you sleep, when you dream, that's all a part of you. Why do you think you need to sleep on a daily basis? The body has no physical need for sleep. There are creatures that don't ever really actually sleep. They're just more aware or less aware at any given time of the day. When you sleep, you become aware of the other lives you have had, you will have, and you are having. When you start to recognize that you are part of the fractal that is God, and that is God's creation, you recognize how you are part of God's power. And that is magic. And I'm going to say again, it comes down to even the mundane. People just have found reasons to excuse some of the things that happen with skilled tradesmen that love their craft. You don't see a lot of those today because people are required to sell out, so they never do what they want. This is society's requirement today. This is what we have been taught to accept as proper. We keep accepting the sins of our fathers as law to follow so that we can gain enlightenment. How's that worked over the last 2,000 years, by the way? Okay, let's take it back even further. Egypt? Mesopotamia? Pangaea? Algarve? How many remember that one? Homeworld. We're the thieves, we stole it. And then our sons stole it from our fathers. And then their sons stole it from them. And it's been watered down and watered down because we don't remember the true history. So it loses power. We've done it to ourselves. Argoth. Remember that. It vibrates. It's not the word. It's the vibration. The name changes. It's the feeling that's correct. It's also one of the ways that has helped me to navigate dimensions. Believe it or not. That's up to you. I just find it so fascinating how many things that I know are happening every day that are just absolutely miraculous. That we have been trained from birth, endlessly, tirelessly. A flood of seemingly random information that seems to have one thread. And we train ourselves into our father's sin, thinking it's okay to just take, and then thinking that the definition we currently have for ownership, how people really need to start questioning a lot of things they take for granted. There is a such thing as ownership. It has its proper place, it has its proper time. Anything with awareness of the things around it has a choice whether it will allow itself to be owned or not. To limit that thing from choice is actually selfish. To allow a thing to step out of a choice it has previously made is love, and is the first step to growth, not necessarily of you, but of something else that you are a part of now. That won't make sense for a single life. You see a single life, you have no clue. A single life is like taking a screenshot of a movie and saying, this is the movie. You really have no clue what a presence of life actually is. That is part of what you are. A presence of life exists in more places than it is aware. The center or focal point is self. It broadcasts a frequency. Yourself, whether you want it to or not, will broadcast a frequency. It is just what it is. That is it. That is you. The only way you start to understand just how much you actually are is when you start thinking back on your life. You know, people do this all the time, but they get stuck in the emotion and they weigh themselves down with it. That's not what I want you to do. You recognize the emotion. It's important, but that's not what the goal is. That's not the end point. And too many people end that story there, so to speak. Think about all the things that could have been done a different way, that you could have chosen to do a different way. I want you to attempt to sort of kind of map out, to the best of your ability, different branch offs and how they might look different. What if you did that, how would the world you know have changed? You know, don't take it further than you can take it. Someone who is mastering something like this will actually be able to understand how the thinking of chess might help. Thinking moves ahead. Now, if you think 3 moves ahead, there's no guarantee that your opponent is going to make the moves that you've predicted. But if you're seeing 3 moves ahead, you're seeing all the various courses that the various moves can make. Now you're getting an idea of your quantum field. What are the different choices you could have made? Those are realities. Those things have happened. You just didn't experience them in this self. That's your quantum field. I don't know why I'm being flooded with so much today. it's hard to get everything into a video. I have done several videos today. It's crazy because all of them are quite a bit longer than I usually do videos. I apologize. These videos will take time. It'll take patience. There's a frequency to them. Even if the information itself doesn't make sense, it'll vibe to something that you do recognize in your self world. You're always going to be able to find inaccuracies in what I say, if that's what you choose to look for, because I'm not speaking on a particular or particle level. I'm speaking on a vibrational or frequency level. You feel it, you recognize it. You can't necessarily recognize it right away. It might just be gibberish, seem like static. But as you recognize the different points where I start to struggle putting things into words in these videos, if you look at the things that I've written on Facebook in the past, if you look at the different videos that I've made in the past, they all stem from one particular theme. The strongest theme that nobody even looks at with me: growing a structure. What that means to me. Why is it so important in my viewpoint? Why is grow a home more important than me as a individual person? Why do I get so crazy about all these different aspects, and how does it link with growing a structure? I mean, all these things fit. People don't necessarily realize how, because I have a difficult time articulating it. It's not necessarily because I have a poor vocabulary. Obviously, I have an extensive one, and I can switch up how I put things into verbiage essentially at will. It's, again, not always accurate, but it is extraordinarily intelligent. You can always throw mud. Quite frankly, I soak mud up. I don't enjoy it, but I do. What I do enjoy is what I get from that process. This life isn't meant to be a fireworks type thing. The roots are underground. That's where I'm at. I'm just kind of sending a message. I'm not meant to be in the spotlight. In the light, maybe. A little bit here and there. That's fine.